All right. Can all of you see can all of you see the presentation? Just a regular thumbs up would be great. Okay, good. Let's start. So, as general questions before we start this session, we would do by show of hands. Now we would do it by show of thumbs. Have any of you used PubMed before? Okay, I see so far 2, 3 hands. Okay. Have any of you read a research article in English before? It doesn't have to be through PubMed, just any type of research article in English. Okay, some more hands. That is good. And lastly, have any of you been involved in a research project before? Even if that has not resulted in a publication yet, you have just been involved. Okay, we see good show of hands. Would anyone like to talk about their experience and elaborate on that? Just, say what was your role, what did you learn, just a brief. You can unmute yourself and talk about that. Don't be shy.
I'm a facilitator. Can I talk?
Of course.
No.
Don't listen to him.
No,
Yes.
okay. I will get.
I'm just joking. Come on, Hassan.
Yes or no?
No, you can speak. Of course you can.
I heard no. Oh, okay. What do you? The question is, did I have participated in a research project and what it was and the processes and those things? Am I right?
Yeah. Have
Yes.
you been involved, and what was your role mainly?
The first participation is in a case report that is published a year ago. My role, actually, all of us participated in writing all of the parts. We didn't divide roles between us. We all have done the same parts of the manuscript together.
Mm-hmm.
Either introduction or case presentation or discussion. We were a good team, really.
Okay.
We had some problems in gathering the patient information because of some loss of infos and
that is understandable. Yes.
Logical difficulties like transportation because the hospital is in Harasta, Dimashq. Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think the
This
fact
is
that
my brief.
Thank you for sharing that. And
experience.
I think it's a good thing that all of you were involved in doing, even if you were doing like the same task, you were able to learn about the different sections rather than have to focus in just one section. So that was a good
Yes,
experience.
that was the primary aim of this act, to learn all things together.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to share their experience? You can raise your hand and or unmute yourself. Well, there were a couple of hands raised when I asked if you've been involved in a research project. So no participants. Okay, that is fine. So topics we will discuss today will be about some fundamentals of research and evidence-based medicine, the sections of a research paper, how to do a literature search, and finally how to organize references, which is something that this year or this course I'm expanding on further because I think it's very important. It's an important part of doing literature search also has to do with how to organize these references you search for. So, introduction. First of all, PubMed is a website. It's a website ran by the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health in the USA. PubMed it's very popular, but it's not the only website you can search for articles. And an important distinction is that PubMed is not a journal. It is just a search engine or index for articles. So further, PubMed does not search for articles that are published in conferences. It only searches for articles that are in journals. And there's this other department of publications which are being in various conferences. So PubMed does not search through that. Um, Also, PubMed is not a place that often includes the full article, so you will need to take further steps to find the full article you're looking for. And we will talk about that later in this session. So what does PubMed give you then? It gives you the title and abstract, and sometimes for old articles it only gives you the title. Um, it's not perfect. It doesn't search through all the journals out there, but for any of you who are starting to do research or want to look for literature specifically in the medical field, it is the perfect place to start looking for those articles. There's also disadvantages that have to do with not all articles are free to read, and we will talk about that later. So to start with some fundamentals on research, there is the hierarchy pyramid of research, and this okay. I see some hands raised. Um, do you have a question, or you can unmute yourself?
It's me. It's me. Yes, yes. What do you think about the statement that the articles that are on PubMed is generally, in rough terms, better than the ones that aren't indexed in PubMed?
Okay, I get what you mean. Well, first of all, PubMed in no way is an, let's say, journals are usually rated by what is known their impact factor. And, you know, usually journals that have links or that share their index with PubMed are more desirable by people because if their articles are on PubMed, people can search for those and then cite them later. Um, so I'm no expert really, but uh, I wouldn't say that these articles hold more, you know, evidence or any or are better peer reviewed because just indexing them in PubMed is a feature, and it's not how journals are usually rated, which is by their impact factor, and that has its own algorithm, and it's a different thing. But that's a good question. But the main point to take from that is PubMed is still the best place to start searching. It's better than all the other websites out there to start. So to go back to the hierarchy pyramid of research, and this is very important, especially in these times where a lot of studies are coming out, because of the recent pandemic. And so we need to know, especially as future doctors, what is evidence and what is not. Obviously, YouTube videos, Facebook posts, and all of that are not scientific evidence. And there's another category of scientific evidence that goes as a pyramid. Hierarchical pyramid means that there's weakest evidence and strongest evidence. The strongest evidence usually goes to meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And we will talk a little bit about each type and what does each type of study mean. Then you have randomized control trials, cohort, case control, cross-sectional, and animal trials and case reports, opinions, papers, and letters are the weakest, but they are still scientific evidence. So there's this category of observational studies in medicine, and that includes the cross-sectional, the case control, and the cohort study. Would any of you, if have any knowledge, would like to talk about some of these studies? If you would like to share some of your knowledge, just raise your hand and we can give you the microphone. Okay, I'll try and rephrase that then. Have any of you heard about or read about, even if you do not have any in-depth knowledge, like have you heard about a cross-sectional study or a case control or a cohort study? Just raise of hands if these words sound familiar to you and they're not the first time you hear them. Okay. Not a lot of show of hands, so that will mean that I will try and talk about them in more detail for you, which is fine. Okay, so a cross-sectional study, in general terms, means that we are doing a snapshot in time. We are looking for a frequency of disease and frequency of any risk-related factors that are assessed in the present time only. So we can, rephrase that as saying, well, what is happening? Let's say we want to do what is the prevalence of, just use a simple example. What is the prevalence of type 2 diabetes in women and men in Syria? That is a cross-sectional. We are taking a snapshot in time and seeing what is the prevalence of disease, or maybe like do a risk-related cross-sectional. Let's say the relation, not a relation, let's say a cross-section of smokers in lung cancer patients in a certain group, and that certain group can be men, can be women, can be, let's say, they can be college students versus high school students. There can be versus, let's say, two cities, Damascus versus Aleppo. This is a cross-sectional. Now, there are two other types, which are case control and cohort studies, and they sometimes can be confusing for, they can sometimes be confusing because, so the way to remember them is that in case control, we are looking at people who have the disease, which are the case, and looking at other people who don't have the disease, which are the control, and we are seeing if there are any risk factors or prior exposure that has differed. So in other ways, we can say what happened, and we can calculate an odds ratio based on a case control. However, in cohort study, we don't look at a group that has the disease and a group that doesn't. We look at a group that has been exposed to a given risk, or maybe we don't know it's a risk yet, but it has been exposed to something, and a group that hasn't, but we have to follow them with time. That's why there are two types of cohort studies. There are retrospective or prospective. Retrospective means that we identify a group that has been exposed to a certain factor, and a group that hasn't, and we go and look back in their charts if they developed a kind of disease or reaction, or we can start monitoring them from now. And generally, prospective cohort studies are better than retrospective, because if you go back, there may be some information that you may not find based on, well, maybe they didn't document this, or the records are missing. So, prospective is better. And from cohort studies, you can identify relative risk. So you can say, well, the relative risk of, let's say, developing lung cancer if you smoke is this much. There are calculations that do that based on the cohort study. And to talk a little bit about the other types of studies, obviously randomized control trials are how you identify effective treatments. And I'm sure you heard about, blinded control trials, double blinded and triple blinded. And what blinded means is that to remove any type of bias, the patients can be blinded, and so they don't know if they are taking the drug or a placebo, which are usually the two, they compare a drug with a placebo. Double blinded is when both the doctors and the patients don't know which patients are on a placebo and which are on the actual drug. And the triple blinded is when even the statisticians who are managing all the data after also don't know. Meta-analyses are when you go and look at a bunch of randomized control trials and try and come up with I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to mute. I would ask you to mute your microphone just for echo, and we will open them back later for any questions. So meta-analyses, you look at different studies and then try to come up with, let's say, a treatment plan. And so because you are combining a lot of data and you are looking at, a lot of studies, that's why it's the strongest in evidence. And this is usually how you come up with treatment protocols from doing meta-analyses of previous studies. Okay, so that will be it for the just a little bit of fundamentals of research. Before we go to the sections of a medical paper, does anyone have any questions? Just raise a hand, and then I can manually unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Okay, no questions so far. If you have a question and for some reason you wouldn't like to share it, just write it in the chat, and I can get back to it. That also is an alternative if that works for you. So the sections or the anatomy of a medical paper usually contains these parts. You have a title, an abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, a bunch of other sections and references. So we'll talk briefly about each one. I guess the title. Again, if any of you want to speak, just raise your hand and I can unmute you at any time. So in terms of the title, it's really nothing to say about it. It's just the title of the article or the paper. So just the next slide. Now, the abstract is one paragraph that summarizes the whole paper. So you summarize the introduction, the methods, even results on discussion all in one paragraph, which is usually 200 to 300 words. And you can read the abstract to know if this is an article that you are interested in or that it contains what you are looking for. And that's why abstracts are useful. And they are a requirement. You have to write your abstract and submit it when you submit your paper. The journal doesn't generate an abstract for you. And because of that, there are multiple ways to write an abstract. You can write it as just as you see here, one big paragraph, and just, generally you start with, and obviously this is a study from Moassad, from Damascus, and the ophthalmology department. You can just start with an introduction and then move to a little bit about the methods and what were your results. You don't have to specify, well, introduction, or let me show you another example like this one. And if that's easier for you, you can just say, well, background, which is another word for introduction, and write that. Methods, write that. Results and conclusions. And, well, you may say, well, this abstract is obviously longer than that one. So what is the reason? And the reason is mainly that each journal has its own requirements. Some journals ask you for 200, some journals ask you for 500 words. So, just read what the requirements are, and that's it. There's no reason other than that. Okay, so now we get to the actual structure of the paper, which starts with the introduction. Now, the introduction means that these are facts, both scientific and statistical facts, about the topic you will discuss in the paper. These are not the results of your study and should not contain the results of your study neither, but these contain results from other previous studies to pave the way into your research. And because it's always being referenced from other papers, the introduction section must contain quotations. Each fact you want to write about has to be cited from another paper. So if you are writing about lung cancer, and you want to say, well, lung cancer is the most deadliest cancer, or is the number one most deadliest cancer, you must find a reference that says that, and obviously write that in the introduction. If you want to write, let's say, if you want to write, well, okay, smoking is an important risk factor of lung cancer, you have to write, or you have to put in the quotation of another reference that says or shows that. So it's really, you can't write any personal opinions in the introduction. You have to put in facts that have been published before from other papers. So, for example, this introduction, they're talking about, they have statistics on cancer survivors, so obviously they need to quote that source. For example, this may be for reference 2, it may be an article showing that if you diagnose cancer early, it improves cancer treatment options, or maybe improves mortality. So you need to write in the exact reference. And that usually is the structure of introduction. It's just facts followed by the quotations. And in the end of the introduction, you can write a little bit about what was your study objective. But once we go through the other sections, you will know what to write and what not. Like, don't go through the methods here. There will be a specific section for that. So the methods means the description of your study. So if you're writing a case report, the methods is the specific case presentation. If you're doing an observational study, it is the description of the sample that you chose. How did you choose them? If you are, for example, let's say doing a cross-sectional on diabetes or any other disease, you need to know what criteria did you use to diagnose this disease, and this criteria was published in what year. You also write down the numbers of people who were in the study, the breakdown of their gender, their age, and other stuff. You can also write in what investigations or tests did you do, and how did you do them also. So the general rule to remember is that in the methods section, you need to be comprehensive and detailed step by step. Do not skip on any logical steps, because you need to know that a lot of these steps may be logical for you, but they may not be for the person who will read the article later, and you want to write it in a way that others can replicate your exact experiment and do it at their institution, which is how the research community collaborates. So you need to write in detail. So, for example, in this article, they said, well, they identified adult cancer survivors as any individual aged 18 or over and carrying a diagnosis of cancer at any point in his or her lifetime. So if you just write, well, we chose adult cancer survivors, without explaining this, we may know, well, do you mean by adult 18? Do you mean 21? So there's a lot of, let's say, confounding factors that you need to be specific in order to eliminate them. You will also use, if you would describe, the questionnaires you used. If you used any questionnaires, you can write down what exactly were the sections and questions, and you can always attach that questionnaire in the paper as well, and it can be found under additional sections. If you did any statistical analysis, you should write that down in the methods section. What program did you use? What p-value or what statistical tests did you use? And what p-value did you deem as statistically significant, which usually is a p-value lower than 0.05. Now we get to the results section. Sometimes if you have a lot of experience about the topic, you can only go to the results paper and read what you need to know. I recommend try and read the whole paper before, and don't jump completely to the results. But results can be shown in a number of ways. They can be written in text. They can be shown in tables, in diagrams, and pictures. So it's important to familiarize yourselves on how to read tables and diagrams and different types of graphs. Sorry if this is a little blurry, but for example, obviously if you wanted to write down all of these results, it would be, first of all, hard to write, but even more harder to read. So tables are a very important tool to write and represent your results in. So the discussion section is where the researcher compares his results with other articles about the same topic. So it allows you to, and it's really what the word means. It allows you to discuss your results and what do they mean. You can talk about the importance of the study. It can contain opinions in a way that means, well, so we think based on these results, there should be further results with more sample size and stuff like that. So it can contain suggestions for the future. And well, if you saw like similar results to other studies, you can cite that. If you saw different results, you can write that. And so, the discussion, similar to the introduction, that is where all the references play a big factor in. Whereas in the methods and results paper, that is tailored to your own specific research. Okay, so the conclusion section. And I've been asked in the previous sessions a lot, well, what is the difference between the conclusion and the abstract? Why not just write the conclusion? Well, the reason is that the conclusion is only the summary of your results, whereas the abstract was a summary of all the sections, from the introduction all the way to the discussion. And usually, the conclusion is a very brief, just a brief way to finalize your results, and that is how it differs from the abstract. Now, there are always, you will see a bunch of other sections, and each journal has its own requirements, and some papers ask for detailed funding, consent, conflicts of interest, and acknowledgements. Some don't, but just to be familiar that these are sections of a research paper. And finally, at the end of each research paper, you will find the references. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the discussion, is that each reference is coded with a number, and that is based on the order it was first used in. So for example, if you cited or used the reference twice, you use the same number that you assigned to it based on the first time it was used. So for example, you can go like 1, 2, not in this section, but in the introduction, you can use 1, 2, 3, and then go back to 1, but 1 will always be assigned to a specific paper. So this is all we have to say about the sections of a research paper. Before we move to another subject, and I think maybe it's a good idea first of all to open up some questions. So do you have any questions? Just raise your hand or write them in the chat box. Okay, so I see Wael has a question. I will unmute you, and if you can please share your question with us.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about the references section. Shall we type the like we have just the name of the article we take it from, or we have to say the introduction or the summary or whatever?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, you do not have to write the abstract or any of that. Usually,
Yes.
Each journal has a structure for what it asks for in references, and that structure usually contains the name of the article, the year,
Yes.
the name of the journal, the authors' names. Sometimes it tells you to mention all the authors, sometimes it tells you to mention just the first author, and then write al. And we will talk more about how to write references this way. And once we get to the reference organizer, which are softwares, it makes the process very easy, where you can just copy and paste from that program to your to your Word document where you are writing your reference, and it automatically organizes it this way. So you don't need to worry, well, did I write the date before the name of the journal and all of that. But no, you should not contain any more details other than that.
Yes, thank you.
It's up to the reader to really go back to this specific reference and then look up the abstract. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your answer.
Okay, I see. I'm sorry if it's Ala or Ala, but I will unmute you. If you can please share your question. And I apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly.
No, Ala, actually.
Okay. Hello, Ala.
So I want to ask how we can know the sort of study without read the whole research.
Okay, that's a really good question. Sometimes just from the title, you can tell. Because if the title was, let's say, the association of smoking and developing lung cancer over a period of 7 years, or let's say a study, yes, a prospective study over the course of 7 years. So, you should know that, well, since we are assigning a risk to a disease, that this is a cohort study. and not a
Yes.
case control. And so sometimes just based on the title. However, usually it is found in the methods section.
In the method.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. A lot of times it would say in the methods that this is a cross-sectional or this is a cohort, and because they go into more detail about their specific method, but it can be mentioned just in the methods section, just in case you couldn't tell from the title. And
So we don't put it in abstract.
Well, it can be put in the abstract as well. The thing is, since the abstract is mainly you, let's say, you writing a brief, so it's really up to the author to write what they need to know, what they want to write. It's not going to
Yes.
be as detailed as you want to be, but you can skim the abstract first, and if you couldn't find it, it will definitely be in the methods section.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, so do you feel that you now have a good understanding about, just a basic background? This is in no way meant to be, an experienced level, just a basic background in research and basic knowledge about the sections of a research paper? I would love to see thumbs up. Let me see how I can. Okay, so I think it's a good idea to take a 5-minute break before we move on to the next sessions, because we will do a live demonstration. So now it's a good time to take a break before we move to a specific topic. Please try and keep the break in a 5-minute limit. So now it's I think we can resume back at 8. We'll allow more time. Please stay connected. Just go back. I'm not gonna discuss anything further, but for those of you who want to stay, I would love to, discuss some topics with some of you. So you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask any question you like. Okay, Muhammad. You can unmute yourself if you'd like. I'm sorry, I thought I saw Muhammad raise his hand. But... Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen just to be able to see the hands and all of that, and then go back. Okay. So, if you don't have any questions, just to use our break time efficiently, for those of you who don't want to take a break, does anyone don't want to take a break? Okay, Ala, I'll unmute you, so you can speak.
I want to ask a question. How can, as an ungraduated student, to start in research?
Okay, so can I ask what year are you in?
I'm 4th years.
You are 4th year, okay. So generally, the first step is to learn a little bit about research. Usually I recommend, learning about the concept and then go and do the practical work. Sometimes there are people who do a backwards approach where they get involved in the project and then learn backwards. Both ways are fine, but you can just learn about, just basic structure. An important thing to recommend, first of all, is before taking a project, and I'll talk a little bit about what type of projects you can be involved in. Just read a little bit further about the sections of a paper. Maybe take a course on academic writing, and there are a number of courses out there on how to write academically.
Yes.
And then generally you need to have, let's say, a go-to professor, either a mentor or a professor who will help you find a case or a project that is a good idea for research. Now, generally, case reports are the easiest way to be involved in research, specifically if it's your first time doing research and you want to get a publication. Case reports are a good idea.
So it
Cross-sectional.
doesn't matter if I'm fourth year or fifth or sixth.
Well,
Does it matter that?
the only way it matters is that, of course, as you go up, you have more medical knowledge. However,
Yes.
that doesn't stop anyone. And what I mean is that when you want to take a project, and let's say you are writing about, just off the top of my head, let's say you want to write about gastric ulcers.
Yes.
An important part of doing that research, and while you are doing the literature search, which we will talk about in the next part, is you need to understand everything about gastric ulcers. So it doesn't stop you. You can, even if you're a 6th year, you may not know everything. So at the same time, it's a learning process. You are learning more about the topic you are writing about. To be honest, if you're a 4th or a 5th or 6th year, I don't think it makes a difference in terms of actually writing the paper, because, it's not a topic that is taught. So you might as well start working on these skills, which are academic writing, reading papers, identifying sections, and just familiarizing yourself early. And so you can start with a general case report. That is usually the easiest way to get involved in research. Then cross-sectionals are, they are a little bit more, they are still easy to do, but you need to have some statistical background to do cross-sectional. So if you want to get your name on a project fast, a case report might be a good idea. Because all the other studies, you need to have data, and getting data may be difficult, from
Yes.
hospitals and all that. So case reports, you just need a chart. You obviously need, approval of your professor and the patient and all of that, and it doesn't require any statistical knowledge, so it can be done very quickly.
Thank you. That's make me encouraged.
No, of course, we encourage, the reason we are doing this is because we are encouraging all of you to be involved in research. So thank you for your participation. I see Ahmed clapping. I don't know if he wants to say something or he's just, clapping in agreement, but I'll unmute Ahmed and see what he has to say.
Okay, Ala. Good to hear that you are encouraged to do that. Actually, in our faculty, I heard about some students who were at their 3rd year and participated in a research. Actually, they are not first authors, or they are not those students with major roles in the research, but learned how to write academically. They learned some techniques in managing the research process till the end, till finishing. It's like handcrafts, but with scientific matters. Not exactly what I said, but if you are at your second, third year, you can learn how to write academically, and you can learn how to bring the information from resources, references, how to write them, to gem, and then this is the role of your advisor or your colleagues in the research to check on this. So I highly encourage you, even if you are at your fourth year, this is a good time to start. Please start, and every one of you. That's all, Abu Hamid.
Thank you.
Thank you for your advice. So there is an direction or team that's could be a start for me for this.
Can you rephrase your question? I don't understand what you mean.
There is a team or organization I should go to it to be a start in research.
Well, you don't have to. You can definitely, but no, you don't have to, because you can do it on your own. And it doesn't have to be your own, as an individual. Obviously, you can do that, but it's, always easier to have, some friends or some colleagues who are interested involved. You mean because organizations and teams are good in terms of big projects if you need data across, let's say, multiple campuses. But I would say no, you can start on your own, definitely. I saw, okay, so we'll let Ahmed speak, and then I think Hassan later.
Okay.
Why did you want to speak?
Oh, I thought you raised your hand. So.
No, it's still raised.
Oh, it's still raised from.
Let's make it low. Oh, lower hand.
Oh,
okay,
so
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
okay,
fine.
No problem. For him, I advise him of searching for the post I posted in the last semester about research and links. I will make it up, goes up, so they can know about resources that are so beneficial, especially for me. I started research with them without any help, but I got a mentorship.
Yeah, so you don't need to be involved in a team, but it's always good to reach out to people who have some experience, who can just give you pointers. And then I am sure all of you are completely capable of completing the work on your own. Galaxy Note 8, I think that is Hassan. I unmuted you.
Yes, I am Hassan. Galaxy Note 8, yes. This is me, Hassan.
Do you want to share your experience?
I was about to say to Ala that you don't really want to be. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that you don't really have to be in an organization or an institute or an official official director to start doing research. As they said, it is. It depends upon your own effort. You can really learn everything from scratch, especially in the age of internet. There is multiple great resources that can take you from a very beginner level to not an expert, but to a medium level, fair enough and sufficient to do your first or maybe a very good tip that you search for colleagues, maybe younger than you that already have an experience in this field, and ask them for advices to make them your mentors. Another way is to have an idea of your own, and then ask for the help from these colleagues and mentors after you learned the basics by yourself, self-learning, yes, from the multiple resources available, and most of them are legit and deliver good information about these topics.
Yes, I got you. So I basically I have to prepare well. Then I could, if I have an idea to research, I could
yes, exactly.
put a group together to. There is no need to any organization for that. You can do it alone.
Sure.
Or
yes.
with a group. Yes. Yes, I got
exactly.
it.
This is the idea I was wanting to say it. Yes, and if you gathered your enthusiastic friends, it will be more easily, because unfortunately, if you want to do something and tell maybe your friends. But if you chose the wrong people that maybe not very interested or not excited to do anything in this field, this will bring you down and won't.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Back up or motivate you. Yes.
Thank you, Hassan.
Thank you, Hassan.
Okay.
Good luck, Ala. So I think we gave enough time for a break. Is everyone here? Just raise your hand or thumbs up just to know that you are here. Connection is good and we can move to the next part. Okay, great. Go back to sharing the screen. So now we will talk more about the practical, the practical side, which is how to do a literature search and how to organize those references. So, how to go to PubMed. The reason we have this slide is because PubMed is not, unfortunately, PubMed.com. And so it's easier just to go to Google and then write PubMed and go to that. And that's why, we have this specific slide. This is how PubMed looks now. However, it will change in May. So this is the new homepage, and this is the one we will actually practice on. And I think it's a much better page. So just keep that in mind. Now, the way to do a search on PubMed, you can either do a direct search, just like you're searching on Google. Just write your text in the search box. If you have something in mind, or and this is where it gets really good, is you can go to the advanced search and filter out the results. So let's say you were looking for a specific author or articles that were published during certain years, or articles that are from a specific institution or from a specific place. All of that can be done in the advanced search. And we will try that. We will try that live for you guys. Another thing you may hear about is the term MESH. So MESH stands for medical subject headings, and they are actually, it's like, it's mesh terms. So they are just words or vocabulary that index journal articles from the PubMed, or from general articles. And this was, believe it, the basic definition that I was able to find on Wikipedia. But how can you utilize mesh terms in a way that helps you? Well, let's say, for example, you want to search for tumors of the tumors that originate from nerve cells, or nervous, the nervous system, or specifically, let's say, no, nerve cells. So if you want to write that down in title, it may not search for it very good. But if you use a mesh term, you can use this term, which is neoplasms nerve tissue, which narrows down your search just for neoplasms that are comprised of nerve tissue. Whereas if you write nervous system neoplasms, you will find all the neoplasms in the nervous system, not typically or not directly from nerve tissue. You can find the mesh terms from a specific website, which will also show how to find the mesh term that correlates with the topic or field you are searching about. And to talk a little bit about reference managers, which this is the first time talking a little bit about that in detail, because the last course a lot of students showed interest in that. What are reference managers? These are programs like EndNote and Zotero, and EndNote, I think a lot of you have heard about. They are a way to organize your references in folders or categories, which allow both for easy import and export. So I think if I remember correctly, maybe Wa'il asked that question, is how to write down your references. And so using a reference manager, it makes the process very easy. And we will show you how to do that. It can copy the citation, or it can even copy an abstract to your paper. It can, keep the PDF and the abstract and the names of authors all organized, because if you have 5 references, you can keep track on your own. You don't need a reference manager. But as you use more references, it's always easier to keep yourself organized. So for basic research needs, I recommend Zotero. I used to recommend EndNote. However, EndNote is not free, and EndNote is good if you are, let's say, an experienced researcher who does a lot of research. But if you're just a basic or new researcher, just use Zotero. It's free and easy to use, and I will demonstrate how to download it and how to use it. I'm sorry, Hassan. I will finish the slideshow, and then allow for questions before the before the demonstration, if that is okay. And I think this is our final slide anyway. Just final remarks. We encourage all of you to pursue research. Obviously, research is an important part on it's an important part on how to both be a good doctor, even for your own practice, even if you are not interested in publishing. Always use evidence-based medicine in your own practice. It does not matter what type of research you do as a med student or as a freshly graduated doctor. A lot of people say, case reports are not enough, or you need to do much, more, let's say, sophisticated research. No, that is not true. As med students, it's only important that you have your name in a publication, because that means you are familiar to what research means. But at the same time, get your name in a publication while understanding the concept, and not just doing it for the pursuit of getting your name in the publication, because it gets easier. The first time is always tricky, but as Ahmed Khalidi said, it's like a craft in a way, where you develop your own flow and it becomes easy, and you may see actual, let's say, you will be obviously proud, and you may see people referencing your article and using that to, develop their own projects, which is always rewarding to see. We hope you all have benefited from this course. We hope you become successful doctors and that you had a good MEC season. Thank you and Ramadan Kareem. We still have the live demonstration, but before we go to that, we can take questions and any comments. Hassan, if you want to go first.
Yes, okay. I have two comments. The first comment is that the new PubMed website unfortunately requires VPN to be in order to open it here in Syria. Because firstly, when I try to open it, it won't open, and I don't know what the problem is. But with VPN and proxy settings,
Well, I am sorry to hear
the
that.
second,
Yeah,
what?
I am sorry to hear that. Yeah, I didn't know.
Oh, okay. The second comment is there is a reference manager called Mendeley. It is from Elsevier publication. It is the best thing I found in it is that it is light, very light on the computer resources.
Exactly.
Is somewhat. It is like less lagging and
Yes.
it is fast. And also it has cloud storage for your library. So whenever you are doing the maybe the research or the literature review or etc., you can reach your references in by cloud library. That's
you.
my comments.
No, thank you for
And it is
noting that out.
yes, it is free. Yes, it is free also.
Yeah, you know, and as Mendeley and Zotero, there are, you know, I would say a bunch of other, you know, free reference managers. You can use whichever suits, you know, your needs. EndNote is in fact
Yes, of course.
very, let's say in you know layman terms, it's very heavy on your computer. Zotero, Mendeley, and a bunch of others are not. I will demonstrate Zotero, and I think all the others have the same functionality. Before we move to the demonstration, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Okay, so can you now see my browser? Just because sometimes Zoom sharing screen doesn't work when changing programs. If all of you can see the browser, just you know, a show of hands. Okay, good. Just to make sure that it works. So this is the new PubMed home screen. You have the basic search bar and the advanced search bar, which we will be using. And here you can put fields. So let's say you want to look for, you want to search for titles that include breast cancer. You can add that. Let's say you want to look on breast cancer and mortality. You want mortality in the title. You can add that. And let's say we want to look on how neoadjuvant chemotherapy involves mortality of breast cancer. And we want to look for articles that were published from, let's say, 2018 to 2019 only, just to be current. Okay, so we got the new result screen. And we here have a bunch of other articles. Now you may see this is 17 because there are always, articles that are submitted in 2017 but then published 2018. That is fine. And so you see that the name or the titles that we put in our advanced search are highlighted, like neoadjuvant chemotherapy, breast cancer, and mortality. And the reason I like the new search method is that you can now filter based on article types. Let's say you want clinical trials or meta-analyses, or okay, so no meta-analysis. So I think those would be other types. Maybe they are systematic reviews. Okay, now to utilize mesh terms, there is a mesh browser also from the NIH, and the most efficient way to use it is by using tree view. So let's say you are looking at diseases, you are looking at neoplasms, and you want to say, well, neoplasms by histologic type. And let's say, well, we want to look at connective and soft tissue, connective tissue. So, I mean, you get the idea on how it helps you narrow down your search and filter your search to get better search results in a way that is better than just searching for that title that may or may not be in that article. So it's a very useful tool. And similarly here, you can add the mesh term. So let's say we want to look mesh terms, we want neoplasm. So, and we want just do the same, breast cancer in the title, just a similar basic search. Okay, so you won't see the mesh term, but the thing is, so PubMed automatically filtered the results that are talking about neoplasm and breast cancer. And breast cancer is very easy example to use. It gets more useful when you want to use or you want to look for rare cancers, or you want to really differentiate between, let's say, the histological types. That's where mesh terms get more useful. So now we have an article titled Breast Cancer from the Lancet Journal. And as we see, PubMed gives me the abstract. Sometimes it gives me the whole article depending on the journal. In this case, it gives me the title, the abstract. And as we mentioned, PubMed does not contain mostly the full article. So you need to go to, usually it's under the upper right corner, under full text links, like this, for example. So now you have the full article and you can read it. Well, unfortunately for this time, the Lancet requires a subscription or for you to be accessed throughout a university license. Let's look for another article that may be free. Let's say this, for example, and this. Okay, that is the same. But regardless, we can still make use of that. Now, once you have your article, you read it and you find out, well, this is something I want to use for my study, or this is something that I want to, go back to later. So it's, the most efficient way is not to bookmark it or to just download the PDF and store it at some folder. The efficient way is to use a reference manager. So in this case, I will demonstrate Zotero, which you can download for free from zotero.org. This is how it looks like, and I will demonstrate it live. And when you download Zotero, it will tell you. So I see something in the chat. I'll just open up the chat. You can filter for free articles. That is true. We'll go back to that later. Okay, and you can download what is known as the Zotero connector, and this is actually what makes Zotero pretty useful. So free full text, breast cancer immunotherapy, facts and hopes. Okay, so this contains the full text. It contains it. It can contain it at PubMed itself or at the original journal, which in this case it's this one. Okay, so it's the full article, and it does give me a link to download the PDF. So if you can see here, I have the Zotero Chrome extension that I just installed from this. So I go to the page and just click this, wait for a while, and you will see that it is automatically pulling the full text PDF. It is downloading it. It is downloading the let's say the metadata of the article, and that means the date, the journal, the authors, the abstract, and all of that. But where did it go? So I will move to Zotero, and I think I have to change my share. You should be able to see it now. Okay, so this is what Zotero looks like. You have your library, you can make folders, and so for example, in this case, here is the article we just chose, and it's automatically, it automatically fills in the data. It includes the link, the authors, the volume and issue and pages, and you need all this information when you want to write the reference. And it also has the PDF attached to it, so you can just go to view PDF rather than search through your regular folders. And then later, what you can do is you can export the item, or you can create bibliography or generate report, and it copies. Let me demonstrate it. So it copies the style of the reference, how it should be in that journal, and so you just use copy to clipboard and then paste it to your Word document, and you should be all set. So I think we can't obviously demonstrate everything, but we just wanted to demonstrate how to search for literature and save the literature you found in an organized manner. Are there any questions about that? So I'm sorry, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the thumbs up. I can only see if hands are raised. So I will stop sharing my screen, and we will go back to the regular discussion view. Okay, so do you have any questions about searching for articles, the process? No hands. Do you think that now you have good experience, or let's say a good start on how to go and search for articles, organize them, and also read them based on the presentation we did? Okay. Okay, that is good. Again, this is by no means meant to be a very detailed or experienced. It's just an introduction on some of these topics we discussed. If you have any questions, you can always write them in the Facebook channel. And I see Ala has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, there is a question. What difference between research on PubMed show,
Mm-hmm.
and the research on Cochrane library?
Okay. Uh, so I really do not know much about the Cochrane kind of index. Um, I think maybe if Ahmed Khaldi has more information about that. Do you?
There is another question.
Mm-hmm.
It may be silly, but
No, there's.
is
Go ahead.
the guideline, the update guideline. I always hear my doctor in university call guideline. So what's guideline, and can we get it from PubMed or this engines search?
Okay, so for an answer for the first question, Hassan says that Cochrane is mainly used for systematic reviews. So I think Cochrane is not like a search engine. It doesn't look for journals across the web and across the countries and just list them together. Um,
It's only meta-analysis, yes.
it's systematic reviews. It's a little bit different on meta-analysis, but it's like it's if you want to look for detailed or more broad research on a specific topic, you can always go to Cochrane and read about that. Now, to answer your question about guidelines, generally guidelines are,
Yes.
they are determined on maybe a yearly basis or maybe more by society. So you have the American Society of Cardiology and as an example, and a bunch of others. And
Yes.
so yes, sometimes they do publish that, and you can find it in PubMed. However, I mean, in your practice, you don't usually do that. The most efficient way is to use up to date because up to date it differs from PubMed in that up to date they have people who look for references and actually write down the guidelines or treatment or recommendations based on those references. So up to date will have that guideline for you. But if you want to read it on its own, you can. I think yeah, you will be able to find it on PubMed. But it's generally the way to get the most up-to-date guideline and the treatment options is to go to up-to-date, because you will have then each society or each organization what it recommends, and it will in fact have reference the exact article where it's from.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yes. No, thank you.
Okay, and this is just I want to ask if I want to write research to write about something new only, such as COVID-19, or can I write about something which has already written by Muhammad Ramadan? Good question. Okay. Sorry, I have to read it out loud. I know you sent it privately, but we want everyone to share this information. So Muhammad is asking if he can write about something that has already been written or only about something new. And the answer is yes, you can write about something that has already been written, definitely. Um, Now, COVID-19, the reason to write for COVID-19 is first of all, getting it published is quicker, just because right now the journals are kind of relaxing their review times. When you submit an article, usually it can take months to review. Now it's not, so they want to push that in terms of getting the information out there. But no, you can always write about something that has been already written. The thing is, and this is an important thing we didn't talk about, is you don't want to write the exact same words. There is a term named plagiarism, and plagiarism means when you use others people publications in their exact word. Like, for example, when you are referencing an article and you just copy paste from their results page or from their introduction page, that is plagiarism, and that is a very it's a very dangerous thing to do, because the journals have way of detecting that. But in terms of just writing about topics, no, you can always write about something that has been written about. And if it's a case report of a rare disease, it may there may be already be articles about it, but there may only be 6 articles. And when you're talking about a rare disease, the 7th case that you will write about will in fact make a difference. And especially in cross-sectional studies, there are always stuff that may have been written about, but may have included, let's say, a small sample, and then you did a study involving a larger sample. So they all work together, because the reason why meta-analysis and systematic reviews have higher evidence is that since they combine or go through multiple articles, they increase the sample size, and when you have a larger sample size, you have a larger statistical significance. If you have a specific question, if I didn't understand your question correctly, and you have another way, you can unmute yourself and say it out loud if you like. Any other questions? Okay, so remember, any questions you have, you can always write them in the Facebook MEC group. We hope you all take this as an opportunity to pursue research. If you don't want to publish or make projects, just read on your own. Some articles are really good to read. You would be fascinated by the results, and I am sure you would want to use their methods and their practice in your own practice in the future. So I think we will end it here. Thank you all for attending. We hope you had a good session, and Ramadan Kareem. Goodbye. So I see the chat is still moving, so you can end the meeting yourself if you like, and then